Salt in the calories.
Parking garage. When that had it.
You would put it right on the beachfront?
Well, look at that.
What do you do with all that?
There's no park, how many parking spaces? How that works?
It's
How
not,
that works?
there now.
I get that.
How you doing, John?
How about yourself?
Good to see you.
Guys with me? No.
Sure.
I met somebody just recently who gave me all kinds of stories about you, maybe from the area over in
But
Lincoln.
there are 3 or 5 acres.
Sometimes you bought a house, once it was some historic house or something.
Yeah.
I
know.
I can't remember who the heck it was. You know what it was? I think he's a broker, I think, for Morgan Stanley. Todd?
Greg?
Yeah. You know him?
He's my neighbor.
Oh, okay.
He's
not down here, though.
He's selling his house, and I noticed a lot of people were there when I drove by the other day.
He lives in Seabright?
No, he lives in, next to me in Midtown when I was there.
Well, you moved? Don't you live here?
No, when I.
Oh, when you lived there, okay.
No, I'm here.
It's not complicated.
No risk, no reward.
He said he's not moving.
Yeah, but
He did try to trick me. He tried to trick me, but I kind of got
He
it.
said he
He said he didn't find it.
He wasn't.
He wasn't, exactly.
Wasn't coming. Okay, he's not coming either?
What?
Is that East Coast Board?
Yeah.
It is 7:31.
That was a big wristwatch. Again, when you were having your hand.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
The Minuteman still quite far out. We all stand for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is now called to order. The Borough of Seabright, in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, provided adequate notice of the time, date, and location of this meeting to the Asbury Park Press on January 26, 2023. Filed notice with the Borough Clerk and posted notice in the Borough office and on the Borough website. This meeting is open to the public. Do we have a roll call?
Councilman Bieber.
Here.
Ms. Dills. Mr. Cashmore.
Here.
Chairman Cunningham. Mr. Julia. Here. Vice Chairman DeSalle.
Here.
Mayor Kelly. Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Mr. Lexi. Mr. Schwartz.
Here.
Mr. Selena.
Here.
Okay, we have an approval of the minutes of April 23rd. Anybody make a motion to approve them?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilman Bieber.
Yes.
Ms. Cashmore.
Yes.
Mr. Julia.
Yes.
Vice Chairman DeSalle.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
And Mr. Selena.
Yes.
Next on the agenda will be the memorialization of the resolution application of Michael Berkowitz. That was the swimming pool on the Tradelands. Anybody have a comment or make a motion?
I'll make a motion to do
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Cashmore.
Yes.
Mr. Julia.
Yes.
Chairman Vice Chairman DeSalle.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Mr. Selena.
Yes.
Okay, and then the next is application number 2022-15. It's a modified site plan approval for William A.G. Incorporated. And I guess you're being represented by Kevin Azadi.
Chairman DeSalle, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Kevin Sadi for the applicant William A.G. So this is a bit of an unusual procedural posture. We were before the board months ago for approvals to enlarge second floor of the existing building on 1106 Ocean Avenue. The application was approved, but there was a bit of an unusual procedural piece to that, and that was during the course of the application, the nature or some of the features of the application changed, and the applicant wanted to add a spiral staircase on the rooftop deck, and that came out during the hearing. And the board accommodated that, and the board said, we'll approve that, but before we adopt a resolution of approval, make sure you submit the plans to our engineering and planning departments and showing what you're talking about. So that was done, and when those plans were submitted, and those plans were dated January 9th, 2023, those plans also featured an enlargement of what was previously shown, of the what was a 920 square foot balcony, and that was enlarged to a 2,276 square foot open deck, and the third story rooftop room increased in area from 363 square feet to 450 square feet. Now, on the day that the board adopted the resolution of approval, the board already had that information, and there may have been conversation off the record. I was sitting in the room. I can't remember if it was off the record or on the record, but I do know that Mr. Hoder and members of the board did discuss those points, and there was questions from the board of Mr. Hoder of, well, does this change any of the variance conditions or anything like that? And the answer was no, they do not. So it was the feeling of the board that they can be approved, and the resolution was adopted. During resolution compliance, the board's planner, Jennifer Bean, looked at the plans, compared them to what was discussed in the application, and said, whoa, hold on. I don't think procedurally this was done correctly. I recommend that the applicant renotice for these changes and come back to the board so that it's done right and it can't be attacked collaterally someday in the future by some person. So the best thing to do would be to notice, come back, and do it the right way. So that's why we're here. And the plans were submitted, like I said, based on the first time we were here. Prior to the board adopting the resolution, those plans were dated July 9th, and you should have those, I'm sorry, January 9th, and you should have those. If there's any questions about what was done or the nature of the enlargements, Mr. Gardella, who's the principal of the applicant, is sitting behind me. But if not, if the board were inclined to approve our application for these enlargements at this time, that's really all that needs to be done to really perfect the application.
I only had one question myself. As we had designated that whole upper unit as residential only, enlarging the deck to that much, is that still going to continue as residential only, or is there somebody intent to use that deck for something else?
No, it's just because we don't have.
I'm going to be sworn in first. Please raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear the testimony you are to give here tonight should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Steve Gardella, Gardella, the owner of 1106 Ocean Avenue. No, it's because we don't have a yard. It's really just going to be for the apartment itself. There's going to be
Okay, well, that's what I'd like to see on the record, that's all. I don't see sometimes parties going on up there and carrying on and people throwing things over.
No. I mean, I'll have friends over, but it won't be, it's not going to be rented out as a party destination.
Well, that was my only concern.
And that's only decking on the second story, because there's other parts of the roof that are behind that and to the side where mechanicals are, that's not going to be touched.
No, that was my only concern. I know, Dave, you made a lot of comments, if you have anything.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is I did do my first compliance letter in April 12th, just before tax day, and There are like 3 things that have to be taken care of, including a note about the sidewalk on the side, and I don't know if I saw the letter, and then I agree with our planners that it should at least come back to the board should affirm it. I don't see a problem with either of them. It's all residential, it's just a different configuration, slightly larger square foot area on the top floor.
Right, and from a planning perspective, we don't really take issue with it either. We just wanted to make sure it was approved properly, since it was a significant change from what you saw and heard at that first year.
No, I agree. I just had to get it on the record exactly what the reason for that change was. If any members of the board have any?
I would also note, Chairman, as part of the return to the board, we had requested and the applicant did provide notice to the 200-foot list and the neighbors. And looking out at the audience here tonight, I would note that there is no members of the public having received that notice that are here to comment or weigh in on the change.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a couple comments from me. I was here when you had the original testimony on this. I was the one that asked the question about the spiral staircase in the roof, because it seemed very strange that there was a decking and railing on the roof, but there was no stairway to get there. You asked for a couple minutes to talk. You came back and requested something different, which seemed kind of strange to me that happened here, right? Because it felt like it was intended to begin with. I have no objection. I read through the original documentation in this one, but in my short time on the planning board, I have never seen a case of request creep as large as this one. And it just feels very strange of where we started and where we're ending, that it happened incrementally, and it almost felt intentional, I'll be honest with you. Because the area is obvious for the things you're now requesting, but you didn't start with. And that feels disingenuous to me.
I can assure you that there was no design to have it play out that way. I think what seemed to me was that as a stream of consciousness during the hearing, the applicant started thinking of things that he hadn't thought of before, and it came up that way. And it was certainly not done in some deliberate attempt to be disingenuous to the board or anything like that at all. Not certainly. That didn't come across my desk or phone, and the way it's and yes, I do agree fully that it was done in an unusual way, but it seemed that the reason for that was stream of consciousness, and I think the applicant was having thoughts for the first time as he was listening to all of this be presented out loud, as might happen sometimes, and so he opened his mouth, and the board was receptive to the things that he said. So we went with it, and that's how it kind of evolved.
I'll just close by saying that I don't have an issue with it, but when you have a rooftop deck with a railing and no way to get to it, and the complex and detailed plans that you provided at the first meeting, that seems kind of strange. That you have a rooftop deck that you have no way to get to, and 15 minutes later you're asking for a stairway. And for a rooftop deck to go from 900 to 2,200 square feet, sort of in a roundabout way, doesn't feel right.
Yeah, in hindsight, I would certainly have wished that that's just the original application, and I don't think the board would have questioned it. It's only a question because of the irregularities that you're noting, and rightfully so. But I don't see that. If anything, it turned into a disadvantage for the applicant to have to come back here again when it could have been squared away the first time. I think, and it probably would have been. But we're here to make sure everything's straight.
Yeah, as the chairman said, a 2,200 square foot deck is massive. And hopefully we don't find a case that there's a lot of people up there because you have to worry about weight load and everything else in that kind of situation. But if that's what it winds up being, hopefully it's documented that that will not be the case. Because that would not be the purpose for it.
Well, also it has to go before the building department for engineering calculations to determine the weight load of the roof. And
From here to get approved?
No, we're approving what he wants to do, but he has to submit plans to the building department for structural approvals. So at that point, they'll determine what he needs to put up, what construction he needs to create to hold that load.
Okay, it's a single-family home, and it's got a deck as big as the house.
Yes, and to have the opportunity to create some outdoor living space, it's consistent with what somebody residing all year round, and especially a place like Seabright, would want to have to enjoy the outdoors without having to leave home. You know, like many people are able to do, but it's not so common in Seabright or other beach towns.
Those are my comments, Chairman.
Okay, is there anybody else on the board that has a question or comment?
Yeah, both our engineer and our planner question lighting on the decks.
I'm sorry, Frank, what was that?
Question lighting on the decks. Confirm, let me see, it says.
Number 4, on David's letter.
David Center,
Letter from
lighting not shown.
It's number 4, item number 4,
It's condition number
Condition
3
number
from the
3.
approval.
on page 3.
I'm asking you to show whatever lighting you're gonna have on the deck.
Right.
We don't want it to be too glaring, we don't want it to be a problem for the neighbors.
It's believe it's not going to be. It's going to be pretty low.
But you should put it on the revised plan.
Yeah, and
Just show.
I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't even thought about doing
But as far as,
And
Well, yeah.
that was a condition of the resolution.
Yeah, it's just fine. I mean, I'm not going to do anything that's going to, cross over any of my sight lines or any of
As
the.
part of the compliance, you gotta put,
So what happens-
50 watt LED block, acorn light,
That
whatever.
actually might be on the engineer or on the
Architect.
mechanical engineering plans.
Okay, you haven't seen those.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't seen
I
anything.
can get a second up.
that would be part of resolution compliance, they're
Well,
going to
fine.
have.
If I can, the way this works, and I think Kevin, you know, there should be one set of plans that will be the set that the chairman signs.
Right.
And that should have architecture and then that one site plan that you have, that shows the, sidewalks information. And that should be stapled together, 10 sets that go to Candace.
Yep.
I get to sign it, she signs it, and the chairman signs it, once they're okay. So if it's on a mechanical plan, have somebody bring it over to the architectural plan. And we'll have it all in one set.
Okay.
So this is the set the board requested and therefore signs.
And then you'll review the lighting before you sign.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll make sure that it wants.
I mean, any lights will probably be on just the part of the house that you walk out of.
Right, that's code, actually. Yeah, there has to be a light near your
I mean,
door.
I'm not expecting to put anything around the perimeter. And believe me, that street light that's out front of the building is going to be enough light up there.
Understand.
Unfortunately.
We need to have that on commercial applications because the code doesn't allow you to do any spillage of lighting outside of your property. And we had a problem with that recently, so Dave's so aware of it.
Correct.
Any other questions to this testimony?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of things I'd like to talk about with it. Arlen, I had to look at the plan, and because you were confusing me when we were talking about the spiral staircase. I thought there was a larger deck around the residential structure, which there is, and then there's also the deck on the penthouse area that has the spiral staircase. So there are 2 decks, total of 2,200 square feet. My concerns are along the lines of what Dave brought up, and that is a lot of people on the deck. He was concerned about commercial use. I'm more concerned about Airbnb.
Oh, it's not, it's where my wife and I are going to be living there.
Now, but it's something like someone could purchase everything and turn that into necessarily a location that lends itself to that type
Well,
of
to be
use.
honest, I'm not looking really, I mean, the building's been in our family for over 100 years. I'm not really looking to sell it. I'm going to leave it to my kid.
Right. No, I understand.
So I'm not going to Airbnb. If I was going to have somebody living in it, it would be a 12-month occupancy. I don't want to deal with Airbnb anymore.
And I knew your dad. I certainly know how long you've been around and
Forever.
the history of the building. I'd like to put some restrictions in the approval for maximum occupancy of the deck, maybe hours of use. some things that will restrict it from getting out of hand.
Can you do something like that?
Yes, if it's reasonably tied to the zoning approval that's being presented, I mean, occupancy, I would assume, would be more governed by the architectural and building code.
Well, that might be maximum 2,200 square foot open, deck that hold 100 people or more, I'm sure. You know, I'm thinking we have an open discussion as to what will be considered reasonable and keep it from being out of control. And believe me, if you're having a birthday party up there in the middle of the afternoon or something, they'll can say, oh, yeah, you know, one more person you are. This is more concern for 4th of July night, you know, and having a large group up there with, you know, kegs and other fun stuff, you know, that's probably what we're trying to stay away from, which is, I think, what you were talking about, Dave. That's
Well, that's my concern, but I don't know if we can restrict, what is the occupancy of a variance of an area that large? Is there a calculation for that?
Yeah, there is, an architect would know that, I wouldn't. How many people?
As we're all pointing out, we're afraid of some crazy party going on up in the evening up there disturbing everybody in the neighborhood.
Especially holiday weekend.
You could probably put a couple hundred people up there on that area.
We understand it's not your intent to do that, but once the property is set up this way, it could happen.
Oh, yeah.
Not only your watch, but somebody else's watch.
We just like to have something to gauge it with, and again, a reasonable conversation that you think would help protect your property as well. So if anybody has any thoughts, you know.
I would think, you know, hours out there would kind of be regulated by the noise ordinance. So if, you know, 1 or 2 people are sitting out there, you know, late at night, not making a lot of noise.
Nobody cares about
It's not a big
one or two
deal,
people,
right? But
you
if
know,
there's
who's gonna call.
there's a party out there till 2 o'clock in the morning, that would probably, you know, trigger your noise ordinance.
The police don't have anything to gauge it against. So if we put a couple of things, and we've done this with other locations, if we put a couple of things in the approval, then they at least have something to go back to as a reference for what's considered permissible and what's not. 75.
75. Not making noise, why?
I think again, it won't register a complaint. This is it.
We just had my daughter's communion, and we had, yeah, and this is just moms, dads, sisters, nieces, nephews. We were over 50 pretty easily, and that's just
So let me just say a couple things. I work ordinance enforcement in the town. That's part of the committee that I run. And ordinance enforcement in this town is extremely difficult. Whether you have 50 people or 125 people, there's no way we'll be able to tell. What we're concerned about, and I know that the board is, and I am, is something happens, you have 120 people up there, somebody falls through the roof and is in. We have no control over that.
Yeah.
The area accommodates hundreds of people. The intent is not to accommodate that.
Yeah.
So how do we get those 2 points to connect?
Well, 75 people was a suggestion. And again, I'm not trying to hamper some plans or family party or something that you want to do one day in the future and say, oh, I have to throw my ball because one day out of 5 years or something, you're going to have a bunch of family members up there. Not a good idea at all. As I said, I'm talking about a hot summer night or a holiday, you know, 4th of July, because if they have fireworks in town, they would be coming over the building and becoming a hazard, or I don't know if they fall through the roof again, building would take care of that, but things maybe going over the railing that shouldn't, to people walking by on the sidewalk, you know, things just getting a little out of hand.
Yeah.
So, you had said 75 people till maximum 75 to such and such a time, or you know.
I mean, I can't even imagine how that many people, but I don't want to restrict myself to 75. How about 100? But like I said, I never, I don't even think I know anyone that I invite over. So I mean,
It's an open conversation, just so there's something to measure against, and if there is an out of hand situation, that
Sure.
they have, you know, the tools to use.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave,
Yeah, I'm actually looking, well, ask a question.
are you going to be able to actually do something that verifies the weight bearing limitation of the roof like this?
I could, but I usually don't. That's not a planning board engineer's job. Usually it's the building inspector that does it through the International Building Code.
Just so you know, that
I am-
building is.
He's more civil engineer.
Stored
Well,
and separated as concrete.
What I can say is I'm looking at the International Building Code now, and they only regulate over like 4 stories, high rises. Anything lower than that, it's 50 pounds per square foot, which is way more than we want to have there. If you take
What is the
5,
occupancy per square foot? of
well,
that?
there is no occupancy, it's 50 pounds per square foot times 2,000, let's say. 5 times 2 is 10, that's 10,000 pounds. So how many people? That's too many people.
Yeah.
So you don't want to use that. You don't want to use that.
The code doesn't help, in other
The
words.
code isn't helping.
Yeah, again, just something reasonable that could be in the resolution that if there any reason it was getting out of hand, that could be used as an enforcement tool. So 100 people, not past 2 in the morning, not past midnight, something like
Not
that.
past midnight, I mean, I can't imagine, yeah, I just.
100 people, not past midnight.
Yeah, so if that's what makes the board happy, I
And if you have
have no problem with that.
120 people in the meditation group, you know what I'm saying? It's probably going to be 30 to 50 or 60 people on the 4th of July night that might cause a problem.
Right.
So, I'm fine with that. I wanted to have an open discussion and come up with something that could be in there that would be reasonable for everybody. So 100 will be there.
I think the noise ordinance is still 10.
10 o'clock, so.
Like, so everybody had quiet.
Yeah, I cannot lie music. Crazy.
If it's 10,000 pounds, 100 people is too much.
Yeah, but, a structural engineer has to calculate that. There's a formula for
10,000 pounds is
roof load and weight.
Right, everybody had way 100 pounds.
You're right.
Yeah.
So unless you have like a lot of kids out there,
But you can reinforce that you were saying that earlier you have block walls in between space.
The whole building was big, the building was designed to hold multiple stories when it was built recently.
And that has to be calculated to do the residential expansion.
I don't think the issue.
Well, let's hold this up for a minute. First of all, we really have no jurisdiction over structural. That is the building department and the engineering. Our purpose here is for zoning and planning. And structural should be out of the question here, out of the discussion. If somebody engineering firms, they do a calculation and it's the building department approves it. So that's not our
Only to
concern.
the extent that we understand the intended maximum load. Because if we don't agree on
It's
that.
done by square footage. So if the deck is the deck's 100 square feet, the calculation's done on 100 square feet. If it's 2,000 square feet, it's calculation done on 2,000 square feet. And the area covers also. There's formulas involved for it.
But does that mean we shouldn't be agreeing to any numbers then?
No, we should be discussing the use of the property. I don't think the
We're
structural
also
load.
talking about 100 people. If we have no authority on structural, how are we talking about the number of weight bearing?
We don't get
We're not talking
involved.
about weight, we're talking about the operation of what's going to be going on up there. We don't want 300 people up there.
Well, I have a question.
So 100 seems like a number, right?
Should we, how we're in the park, in the public spot with everybody else. So we live in a newer society. Those two don't cross each other. And what Dave is, I agree with Dave, that we're not in the design business. If we put in a condition, 100 people to midnight, maximum 100 people, maximum midnight, and then you put, that's the house 100 people, if you have 2 people or 10 people out on the deck, who cares what time you watch the sun come up? It's just for large gatherings. 100 people or less and until midnight.
That's why I asked the question whether or not a load analysis is going to be done by somebody. If we say 100 is permissible, does anybody evaluate the maximum load?
The architect is supposed to do a load analysis, and the building department is supposed to review it. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
The very worst thing that can happen is we set 100, it doesn't get evaluated. The people stand in one place, they fall through, and they look back at this board and say, how did you approve that?
So you can say the lesser of 100 or the maximum.
All I want to know is whether or not structurally, the right operations can be done.
No, I understand what you're saying. You don't want to put the board in a position of liability.
Right, but the architect won't design it by the restriction of 100 people till midnight.
Somebody-
They'll design it by how many people can you have on so many square foot, that's how they set
I
occupancy.
get that, but what we're
Yeah,
talking
it'd be a
about,
building code.
we're talking about an existing roof that has no intent to be changed.
Yeah, he's building everything new up there.
No, they're not, they're using the existing roof on the existing building.
Yeah, but they'd be extending it.
That all has to be designed by the architect, you don't get involved.
How about if, I think this might cover it, if we have two separate conditions, independent of one another. One condition being that the proposed construction of the roof and the use of the roof has to comply with all building code requirements as it relates to
In regard to roof load for human capacity,
With what Dave just said, yes.
for residential capacity.
Right. Separate condition, subject to complying with that code, they have a maximum limit of 100 up until midnight. So if the code only would allow for 78 people,
Yeah.
you know, then that's what it is. If, you know, if it would otherwise allow for 120, they're capped at 100.
It's calculated by area. Same as a bridge. The bridge is calculated by area, whether there's one car on it or
I
3,000
understand
cars.
all of that, but 80% of this roof that's going to become the deck is not changing.
That's the point loaded through though, isn't it?
It is not changing. It's the existing roof that's on the building right now.
So they calculate that all together. I won't be.
Dave said they may or may not.
Well, we're gonna put it in.
I've seen residential structures just rely on the signature of the architect and not seen calculations. Yes, we designed it, but then you don't see the calcs.
Could you require it?
Well, you could require it. You could say that that a roof load calculation in accordance with the International Building Code or the building codes of Seabright will need to be done and submitted to the building department.
With the assumption it's going to be used for personnel, not just a roof. I think what Ben said.
For human residential habitation.
I think what Ben said was perfect. It's a two-part thing. We're going to look at it structurally to support the load of people, and it's going to limit the amount of people. And if that number is less than 100, that becomes the number that they have to comply to. And from a planning board perspective, we say 100 is the limit.
Well, what you could do is you could set the resolution up so that the 100 has more to do with zoning and planning than it has to do with structural. So it kind of takes you out of that realm of calculations.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
See, if you see this room is maximum 150 persons are allowed in this room. So the engineer has to calculate the structure to hold 150 people plus
We get
furniture.
it. But this is the roof of the building that was never designed to have 100 people standing on it. Right?
I've done 100
Hang on.
I've done 100 renovations. The load above has to be calculated all the way through to the bearing position, bearing footings down the bottom. They may have to add things. They have to add new headers. They have to add all kinds. It's all calculated by engineering. It's not.
As long as you understand the intended use.
You are building a deck, aren't you?
Sorry?
You're building a deck, you're not going to be standing on roof.
A pitch roof on a certain pitch has a lower.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it'll be deck or if it'll be fiberglass roof.
The lower the roof, it gets another calculated.
And
There's going to be some material.
Yeah, it's not gonna be standing on plywood. So there will be something there, but I just haven't decided which.
Well, the architect and engineer will design that, plan on that, or whatever you need. Because we're saying 100, it's not designed by 100, it's designed by the maximum load in that square footage. So you may have to do something structural.
Calculations have to be submitted to the building inspector in accordance with Seabright's building code to prove the adequacy of the deck for its intended use.
Let's leave it at that.
Perfect.
We're not involved in it. I don't want to be liable for construction. So, is there any other questions? If not, I'll open it to the public. We'll open it to the public if anybody has anything to say. Nobody's in the public, so we'll close the public. Is there anybody on the board that has a further discussion or motion?
Yeah, just want to make sure, you're going to put those 3 restrictions in there about design load calculation. Maximum.
Load 200 maximum, not past midnight. I also have a condition that is for owners of the second floor residential unit only, and accessory to that use only. And also the last condition that there be compliance with the odor report related to the lighting.
Right, Dave, that's improving lighting.
Okay, those are the four I have.
I'll make a motion to approve the discussion.
Second.
And any other comments in the previous resolution shall
Right.
continue forward.
Are you ready?
Maybe we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Keshler?
Yes.
Ms. Julio? Yes. Vice Chairman DeSalle?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Zelina?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Candace, why don't you skip me on this? Why don't you skip me on?
Why did I skip? I think maybe had something to do with the first part.
I was at the first one.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I couldn't second, I can't vote.
Oh, that's true.
Well, you go ahead and have
Councilman
it.
Bieber?
Yes.
Congratulations, enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When's it
We don't already have that.
I got a couple of minutes for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Let me know if you're gonna have that big party up there, make sure you remember me at the first night.
Who would want to have?
Unless you got this one through it.
See where fireworks happening?
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
closing item,
I
what?
just have one comment about Berkowitz.
About what?
Berkowitz, the first resolution that we did. I was out there today. There was a complaint filed, and maybe I shouldn't have waited. I did. I waited until you did the resolution. The pool contractor was sending all the pool water onto the seawall and into the seawall, as in eroding, not that they can move those stones, they couldn't, but the building department was about to call the DEP today. Well, the guy came right as soon as he was told, he came right over and he repaired and he took the pipe out and changed it. It's gone now. I just looked at it now. It's gone. So just a little story. Things happen.
People don't understand. Look at during Sandy, when we were putting sand on the beach and we realized we couldn't do it. We had to take it back off the beach and for purification.
He doesn't own the seawall, so it was what happened to the building department today was good.
Yeah. That's what our other agencies are supposed to do. The only closing items if you didn't read the paperwork that was submitted to you, we're revising two of the meetings for the planning board. The June 13th is now moved to the June 27th, and the July 11th is now moved to July 25th. So if nobody took notice of that. And then if there anybody has any other. Not. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
That's a rough meeting.
Right.
That's a rough